Yeah.
And the reality is now you got somebody who owes you a favor. You never know when you're going to be able to call that puppy in.
It's absolutely true too. It is true, and it's stuff like that's helped out in the future, in the past, and all that stuff in different races. It's always come to the time where having friends is a good thing. It's not something where, you know, when I stopped, you really think about that.
Right.
But anybody that knows me well knows it's just something I do. But yeah, absolutely. It's having more friends has never been a bad thing.
No. Compare racing in Europe and racing here in terms of the style of racing. Yep. And how hard it is, and how cutthroat it is.
Absolutely, the biggest difference between the two, between racing in Europe and in the States, the biggest difference is really in the States you got to do everything tactically right. You got to be a little cagey, and you got to win with good tactics.
Right.
Brute strength is good, but tactics is what's really going to win you the race in the States. In Europe, it's brute strength. It really is. Who's the fittest rider? Who's the strongest rider? More often than not, it's the guy who wins the race.
Those tactics aren't as important.
Not so much. You got a 9-man team. When you got a 9-man team, you put 4 or 5 guys on the front. You still got 4 or 5 guys left.
Yeah.
So you have a huge team. In the States, when you're racing with 7, and you got to ride 5 guys on the front, that only leaves 2 of you. Now if you're wearing the leader's jersey, that really only leaves 1 guy. So you have to be careful where you use everyone's energy. When you got a 9-man team, especially a strong 9-man team, it's pretty hard to use them up. So you really just drive them hard. There's always a time when a second team or a third team will get on the front, and the pace is so hard and so fast that you come down to the end of the race, everybody's tired, best man wins.
Sure.
More often than not. Not always the case, but realistically the tactics in Europe are really right at the finish of the race, if there are going to be any.
When you started, there wasn't a Tour of California. There wasn't
No,
a tour,
there wasn't.
There wasn't a Tour de Georgia.
No.
There
Nope.
wasn't a Tour of Missouri.
Nope.
Looking at the American landscape in terms of cycling, it seems like that everything's heading in the right direction with these big
I'd say it's the same. I'd say it's the same.
Because of Kmart and because of the big races back
absolutely.
then?
Everything you've lost, and then you've gained something in its place.
So it's
always in the States, you lose something, gain a new race.
Lose a Coors Classic, you get something better.
Right, exactly. Lose West Virginia, you bring in Tour of California. So there's always been something like that, where you lose Tour DuPont, you bring in Tour of Georgia.
Right.
And Tour DuPont was every bit as big as Tour of Georgia.
Sure.
No problem. They're literally on the same scale. And same thing, West Virginia, maybe a little bit smaller than Tour of California, because Tour of California realistically is top notch. It's up there with any European race you'll do aside from the major tours.
Speaking of Tour of California, have you had a chance to scope out some of that
I heard
last stage?
I don't need a chance. I grew up here.
you know Palomar like
I
a
know
bat.
all of California, all of San Diego. I know by heart, and most of California I know pretty good too.
So in terms of that last stage, it's going to be pretty brutal.
Yeah, last stage. I was begging the promoter. I'm like, just have it finish on the top of Palomar.
Yeah.
I had this discussion. Jim Burrell's the promoter of the race, and we're sitting in the car, and I had this discussion, and California had it, like, have it finish at the top of Palomar. It would be an incredible show. It's like, Horner, they don't pay you to have it finish at the top of California. I said, you have it finished at the top of California, you will get paid. You get paid in other ways. You get paid because sponsors want the TV rights. The fans will come out. You'll have huge crowds. I go, you have it go over Palomar, it's going to be a good race, but it's not going to be the same as finishing at the top.
You mean finishing in downtown Escondido is not as cool as finishing?
Nope. Why does everyone watch the tour? Do you watch the tour for the field sprints, or you watch the tour for
mountaintops, baby? Yeah,
mountaintop finishes.
Absolutely.
That was the exact same conversation I had with Jim Burrell. I said, listen, okay, maybe this year, because they get paid X amount of dollars to have it finished, and the city says, hey, we want it to finish in our city. We'll pay X amount. Yeah, exactly.
About $100,000.
About $100,000. Yeah. Lance Cumming might have bumped it up. Before Lance, I think it was a little bit less. Yeah. But so X amount, $100,000 finish. Maybe at Palomar, finishing at the top of Palomar, nobody will pay $100,000. Right. But the following year, because the crowds were so huge, so big, and when you got to sell it for sponsors, all of a sudden your sponsors pay twice as much, and the TV rights pay 4 times as much, and then you make more money that way. Because the Tour de France isn't what the Tour de France is because they have field sprints. It's because they finish at the top of Alpe d'Huez and they finish at the top of Mountain Summits.
Well, and a lot of those cities pay for
just to pass through.
Yeah, pass through and to start there.
Absolutely,
yeah.
And that's the thing. You make the race bigger, you make the race better. All of a sudden, Escondido will pay you $100,000 just to have it pass through instead of have it finished. Yeah. And every other race will. And so that's what I was telling Jim. And so
He might listen to
He's a business guy. He's got to do what he thinks is best. So he picked to go over it. It'll be a good stage. Won't be the same if it finished at the top, but it'll be a good stage.
No. So I mean, what they're hoping obviously is that like you said, Tour of California is something that can be decided fairly early with time trials. So that hopefully that last stage will decide the thing. Absolutely,
and that's the way. In order to really see some real action on Palomar will be if the time trial if maybe a guy who's not a pure climber won the time trial, he's wearing the jersey, and now you got to break him. I don't really see it happening because it's going to be Lance or Levi wearing the jersey. And so someone's going to try. Someone's going to try to break. It's still going to be a good show. There's going to be 10 to 25 guys at the top of Mount Palomar, and then there'll be 25 guys that get back on the descent, and then there's going to be some good attacking as we go up through and finish up in Escondido. So it'll be a really good race, and he's done a good job of putting on a good course.
Oh yeah.
So California, being what it is, has gotten bigger and better every year.
Well, and the Europeans love coming and staying in nice hotels.
Absolutely. Nobody complains, with the exception of this year. Usually the weather's really good too. This last year the weather was
awful,
exceptionally bad for
that
California.
one stage through Big Sur.
We did 7 hours. We came down the coast, a 7 hour, 135, 40 mile race or something like that day.
Awful.
We did 7 hours freezing cold rain.
Yeah.
I have been colder in my career, but only for a 2-3 hour period, and so to be that cold for 7 was unbelievable.
How long did it take to warm up?
You're back, and I was actually sick too. So I had a temperature later that night, like 103 temperature later that night, and so I was through California. About after the 3rd stage or so, I started getting sick, and then after that stage, I was really sick. And just had a fever, and that night they started me on all kinds of NyQuil stuff and everything you can have. So then, luckily, I had my own room, and I had a king size bed, so I was literally like just soaking this half of the bed. I'd roll over and soak that half of the bed, and then I'd roll back over to the damp part.
Oh my God!
But that's what's good about having the doctors on the team is you have someone there and to take care of you. And so the next day was a time trial, and I got through the time trial, and then ended up getting through the race and finished 7th overall, so it was good. But Levi was winning, so you can't drop out of these races, especially when it's Tour of California, and the only other race you got that's close to that in the States is going to be Georgia.
Right.
You got a guy winning Tour of California, you got to be there for your teammates,
suck it up.
You got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about Levi. What makes him great? Because you room with the guy.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know him really well now. Sometimes we joke around. We know some of these guys better than our girlfriends and wives and all that kind of stuff because you spend a lot of time. Absolutely. Cadell was that way. Not I don't know Levi as much because we didn't spend as many races and certainly not the same amount of time. But Levi is really, him and Cadell Evans. As soon as I met Levi from the team, I'd known him professionally my whole career. But as soon as I was rooming with him, I was like, man, you and Cadell are just identical. Just absolutely won't eat anything bad. Doing the stretching they need to do, doing the training they need to do. Everything is for the bike race of that day and that month, and then 3 months coming up, and all that kind of stuff. And so, really, just he does everything he can to be in the top shape that he can be for the events that he wants to win.